Hello guys, and this video is going to be a bit of a horror story. We will talk about zombies, but not those ordinary zombies, but aircraft zombies. That's how tech experts around the world describe Russian aviation. They're aircraft that are totally collapsing without the necessary maintenance, and this is the example of how sanctions work. In general, they have serious troubles with their airlines, with no-fly zones that keep growing around the Russian capital, around St. Petersburg, when the Ukrainian drones visit them to demilitarize evil objects, legitimate objects. And there are tons of problems, and actually at least 10-15% of their planes cannot operate anymore. So what they do, they cannibalize them, use their details from ones to repair others. Would you agree to fly in such an aircraft? Especially taking into account that Russians are super negligent with their own airspace. They deny the dangers that the war they started impose on flying, and sometimes allow other aircraft cross very dangerous regions. So I've decided we need to talk about both the military aviation, 1/3 of which was destroyed during just one day. That's amazing. And yes, this is our Spiderweb operation, and I hope more to come. And also about the civilian aviation that is dying under the sanctions, and that is a very vivid example of how sanctions work. But most importantly, living for 3.5 years in times of the big modern war, I have come to understand that the modern war is not that much about territories or villages you control, but about the branches that you destabilize and destroy. And right now there are many in Russia, starting from the oil refining industry, banking system, and now aviation. So let's discuss all of that in the video. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat and demilitarization of Russia, the only working peace plan, subscribe, we discuss all of that on the channel. Let's start with the serious problems in Russian military aviation, and of course here I am proud to remind you about 41 Russian strategic cruise missile carriers erased during a historic Spiderweb operation organized by SBU and many other beautiful people who are now safe home in Ukraine, maybe preparing another surprise for the Kremlin goblin. And there are a lot of examples when Russians also destroy their own planes. They do it with friendly fire, with traditional Russian negligence. For example, just this week, -1 Su during some trainings or something. Anyway, I think that during this war, Russia lost more than 1/3 of its aviation if the Spiderweb erased 41 just during one day. But Russians also experienced tremendous problems with their civilian aviation, and there are a number of reasons for that. But what I like more, even if Donald Trump decides to start his open relationships with Putin, lifts all the sanctions, Russian branch of aviation won't be able to recover. So let's start from the very beginning. Until 2022, despite the annexation of Crimea, despite the violation of the international law, despite the tragedy with MH17 caused by the Russian invaders, Russia was allowed to live its normal life and continued using airfields, airlines of international companies. It is only in 2022 that sanctions stopped Russia from using these things. By the way, that is another proof that Trump does not understand Putin's mindset when he thinks that offering him to return back to G8 or allowing him to, I don't know, Russian planes to travel around the world will prevent him from attacking Ukraine or other countries. No, he had it all back in 2020 together with the annexed Crimea, and he did not want it, he wanted more. That's a classical problem of the dictators. They want more until they are stopped and buried. subscribe to witness that together, and please share these videos to demonstrate your solidarity with Ukraine and to fight Russian disinformation. So in 2022, serious troubles started for the Russian civilian aviation. Number one, a lot of good countries witnessing Russian war crimes, understanding how important it is to punish such evil, closed their airspace for the Russian aircraft. It is about the European Union, it is about the United States, and I hope it will not change until the Kremlin regime is defeated. That is very important. Then, a lot of countries allow traveling, those that pretend to be neutral, like China or Turkey. They allowed Russian aircraft to land and to ascend, but it made the whole situation very complex. Another important thing is that sanctions banned Russia from buying new aircraft, and they did not use Russian aircraft. They have something like Sukhoi, but there are very few aircrafts like that. The majority that they used were Boeing and Airbus, French and American. And by the way, during the last attack on Kyiv, Russians destroyed a central office on Boeing in Ukraine. And if Donald Trump was about protecting the American people and the American businesses, he would definitely react it. But somehow he keeps protecting Putin, not even the American people. I'm not speaking about brave Ukrainians, So anyway, another proof of this weakness, non-competitiveness of Russia. They have lost all the heritage of the Soviet Union. They do not construct aircraft. They don't have their own aircraft. They needed Boeing and Airbus and Boeing stopped selling them both the aircraft and the details they need for the maintenance of others. And in a couple of years, this grew into a serious problem. In 2022, Russia had like 700 aircraft, and now more than 10% of them is already dead. And I kind of like it phrase, especially in the context of the Russian Federation, they cannibalize these aircraft. They use the details, insert them into other aircraft, and some commentators joke, use adhesive tape for that to be in place. It's insane to fly in Russia, both in military and civilian aircraft, because it's super dangerous, and once again, not because of Ukraine, but because of Russia. We always target only legitimate objects, but Russians are known for friendly fire, for negligence. And what if not negligence that is? When you have, an aircraft that consists of 5 different patches, everything is like Frankenstein in Russia, starting from Putin and finishing with their aircraft and this project of the Soviet Union that is totally dead, smells bad, and cannot be restored apart in this evil head of Putin. So they cannibalize this aircraft and they create zombies, and they have hundreds of accidents in the air. And these are not minor accidents. It's not something like, air conditioning is not perfect, or you cannot watch a movie on plane. It's serious things like troubles with one engine, or what's the English for that, when you descend, these wheels appear, chassis, we say it's in Ukrainian, and they don't work. And that's tremendous. Plus, multiply it by the fact that Russians can only fly inside Russia. Very few can take this really long trip to somewhere. And like, for example, when Lavrov needs to get somewhere, it takes him like 11,000 kilometers to get to that location, traveling through only neutral countries. I still cannot understand how can you be neutral in such war when Russia openly violates the world order and commits so many war crimes. So they travel, like ordinary people, they travel around Russia. They rarely travel abroad. And it's impossible to travel around Russia because With each day, there are more and more of the Ukrainian drones that fly to legitimate military objects, but they do fly in the skies of Moscow, St. Petersburg, and dozens, remember about that. Compare it to the start of the invasion, dozens of Russian regions that are a war zone. And actually, with this paralysis of their airlines, of their airspace, to some extent, we save lives of those Russians who otherwise could sit on that Frankenstein zombie aircraft and collapse somewhere because of its poor maintenance. Unexpected way to save Russians. So another interesting thing is that problems with airlines, problems with their aircraft led to this constant remarks from the so-called negotiations group from Russia. And one of the main things they wanted to ask Donald Trump is to lift sanctions in the sphere of aviation. Hopefully this will not happen, and I do trust that there are a lot of people, Democrat and Republican in the United States, who do not see Trump and Putin friendship as something normal. So they wanted the sanctions to be lifted. But here we have a tremendous fact that many might have forgotten about. At the start of the full-scale war, when good companies stopped working with Russia, Russia stole all the aircraft that were located on its territory, like that were in leasing and so on. So that like your airlines had their aircraft in Russia, it was taken by Russia. So even if the sanctions lifted and the Kremlin wants to buy aircraft from these companies, I'm not sure they will sell until they get all the money back, and there will be lots of trials and lots of problems. Plus maybe some really have dignity and will not agree to sell under any condition. And if others don't have that dignity, they're accused. So it will take years and years for the Russians to pay for the stolen aircraft, to stand in a queue and finally get something. And right now they already experience tremendous cuts in the number of those aircraft that can fly. And remember that those that fly are zombies that the majority of us would never agree to board. That's important because from what I see in this modern, very dynamic warfare, sometimes it's more important to paralyze a specific branch of the country's economy than to get a settlement. Because it influences a lot of other aspects, starting from the spirit inside the country. And trust me, those tens of thousands of Russians who are stuck in airports or who experience accidents as they describe on board of their aircraft don't feel very optimistic about the future of Russia. And here they are right. That's the only way when Russians are right, when they don't feel optimistic about their future. So we may say about the collapse of their banking system, the collapse of their oil refining and gas industry. They seriously suffer without the gas transportation via Ukraine, and I'm proud that we stopped that. Aviation and many more. Coal mines are in great trouble, and actually many more aspects that demonstrate how this house of cards named the fake Russian Federation is shaking. So remember to watch my interview with Valery Peker, who is the head of Decolonization NGO, and he is the one who tells a lot about why Russia will dissolve naturally. Also, remember to check my new video about nuclear weapons and Ukraine on my new channel, Anna Danilchuk, and here I connect the link. Once again, thank you for your support. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel. That's the blessing, and I'm very grateful. Follow me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, Threads, and Discord. Check the link to our merch shop. There are lots of good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine, and a new great summer collection with some spiderweb designs. But most importantly, thank you for being friends of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!